Well, it's nice to have Corey back. Good morning, beloved of God. This is a good morning indeed, and I welcome you all to the Kent United Church of Christ. We are an open and affirming and an accessible to all congregation, and we wholeheartedly proclaim, whoever you are, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. One and all, if you would please sign the pew pads somewhere around your chairs, we would deeply appreciate that. And I offer a very special welcome to all of our guests this morning. You honor us with your presence. As always in the life of this congregation, there is much happening. So I commend to you the back page of your bulletin. Please do read through it, and you will find announcements and also a calendar for the upcoming week on the back of your bulletin. This is the day that God has made. Amen. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
Please rise in body or in spirit. Today we know of the energy that moves all things, the oneness of his existence, the diversity and uniqueness of every moment of creation. Every shape and form, the attraction, the allurement, the fascination that all things have for one another. Humbled by our knowledge, chastened by surprising revelations, with awe and reverence we come before the mystery of life. Please join me in a litany for healing, to bring new life to the land, to restore the waters, to refresh the air.
We join with the earth and with each other.
To renew the forest, to care for the plants, to protect the creatures.
We join with the earth and with each other.
To celebrate the seas, to rejoice in the sunlight, to sing the song of the stars.
We join with the earth and with each other.
To recall our destiny, to renew our spirits, to reinvigorate our bodies.
We join with the earth and with each other.
To recreate the human community, to promote justice and peace, to remember our children.
We join with the earth and with each other.
We join together as many and diverse expressions of one loving mystery for the healing of the earth and the renewal of all life.
And now may the peace of Christ, who is all of creation, be with you.
And also with you.
Please pass the peace with one another.
A reading from the New Testament. Then the angel showed me the river of water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb through the middle of the street of the city. On either side of the river is the tree of life with its 12 kinds of fruit, producing its fruit each month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Nothing accursed will be found there anymore. But the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his servants will worship him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. And there will be no more night. They need no light of lamp or sun, for the Lord God will be their light, and they will reign forever and ever. Here ends the reading from God's word.
Thanks be to God, who is still speaking.
Well, we continue our sermon series this month of July on our bicentennial focus, which is our people this month. We've looked at John Brown and the abolitionist movement and anti-slavery and racism as it still exists. We've looked at Bill Brinker and global poverty and global health issues. And today, as you have guessed, we're looking at Edith Chase and the environmental movement. I thought it appropriate this Sunday, on the heels of our Vacation Bible School, which did focus on environmentalism and our care of creation. And I'm just delighted that our kids spent a week learning about such important issues, as you heard and saw with the song this morning. There's a red moon rising on the Cuyahoga River, rolling into Cleveland to the lake. There's an oil barge winding down the Cuyahoga River, rolling into Cleveland to the lake. Burn on, big river, burn on. Now the Lord can make you tumble, and the Lord can make you turn, and the Lord can make you overflow, but the Lord can't make you burn. Burn on, big river, burn on. Who remembers these lyrics to Randy Newman's Burn On that became a hit off of his 1972 album, Sail Away? An ironic title, given nothing much was moving on the Cuyahoga River in those days. It was a dead river for all intents and purposes, unable to sustain any sign of life. And we got used to being the target of all the jokes. Perhaps it's what makes us northeastern Ohioans such hardy stock. Our crooked river, which is what Cuyahoga means in the Iroquois language, is what gave rise to Cleveland's and all of northeastern Ohio's infamous nickname, Mistake by the Lake. But that has never stopped us from loving our waters. They are the faces, perhaps, only a mother could love. Despite the pollution, the oil slicks, the waste, and the stench of a river that had stopped moving. The stillness of a river that had died. Enter Edith Marie Cates Chase. That's Edith on your bulletin cover. A chemist by training, she became an award-winning scientist, publishing scientific papers in the hydrology section of the United States Geological Survey. She was a founding member of the Coastal Resources Advisory Council, and for 15 years, she served as Kent's zoning inspector, creating one of the first hydrology studies of the effects of oil drilling on groundwater, and then proceeded to devise a method for monitoring well hydrology that is used by local governments across the country to this day. But it was her activism that gained her national attention. Her interest in environmentalism was inspired, as Becky mentioned, by reading Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, which was published in 1962. 7 years later, the Cuyahoga River again caught on fire, this time in Cleveland. And not only did Edith wake up, but so did we. When Edith was interviewed later about that time, she said, "The public was outraged because rivers should not be on fire. When the public gets outraged, things happen." Things happened because she made them happen. On the very first Earth Day in 1970, Edith was instrumental in forming the Kent Environmental Council, which pushed for the passage of the federal Clean Air and Clean Water Acts. We can also thank the Environmental Council of Kent for our local recycling center. But Edith focused mainly on improving water quality in the Cuyahoga River and Lake Erie. She was a member of that Cuyahoga River Remedial Action Plan, the Ohio Coastal Resource Management Project, and the International Joint Commission on the Great Lakes. I don't know when the woman slept. As her children described it, Edith's scientific background allowed her to thoroughly understand these environmental issues. She believed that informed citizen participation was the way to make change happen. She went to county commissioners' meetings or hearings at the state capitol in Columbus, asking the tough questions and giving detailed testimony. And she often remarked, "Common sense is evidently not very common." When asked what her favorite book was, Edith replied, "Theo Colburn's Advances in Environmental Toxicology." Riveting bedtime reading, I'm sure. As her son Richard wrote to me, "All of this intellectual work left little time for physical exercise. As I was reminded in a recent condolence card I received, my mom would say she stayed in shape by jumping to conclusions. Edith went on to receive many numerous awards for her environmental work, including induction into the Ohio Conservation and Women's Halls of Fame and the Burning River Foundation's Outstanding Environmental Leader. Although incredibly modest, she was especially proud of the 2005 Walter B. Jones Memorial Award for Coastal Steward of the Year from the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Finally, in 2014, the League of Women Voters of Kent, which we're so proud to host here at Kent UCC, and many of our women are involved. Edith was an active member for many years, and the League and the Kent Environmental Council organized the Edith Chase Symposium, an educational event to be held every year to help citizens understand and become involved in local environmental issues. But most notably, for all of us in the chapel today, is that Edith's work was grounded in, you like that word, grounded in and flowed from her theology. She understood that to be created in the imago Dei, or the very image of God, means that we ourselves, every one of us, are creative beings. For if the Creator of all created us in that same likeness, we too are creators, creative creatures, able to reason and think critically, fully equipped to devise creative solutions, even to the most complex of problems. Edith Chase's lifelong research, work, and activism was all an expression of her faith in a God who created all there is and called it good. The fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the green plants for food. Thank you, Marilyn, for the beautiful flowers this morning. The creeping things that creep, every living thing upon the earth that moves, everything that has the breath of life. God made them all, and for some strange reason, gave us the responsibility to care for it. What was God thinking? I can't help but see God do a major face palm about that decision. Reverend Carol Devine, minister of the Green Chalice, reminds us of Ecclesiastes 3. Surely the fate of human beings is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath. All have the same breath. God's Spirit went across the waters of chaos in the beginning as wind or breath and imbued all of creation with divinity. All of creation was created with that same breath, the breath of God. As one dies, so dies the other. I can't help but think of our crooked river, our burning river that even Great Lakes Brewing Company has decided to name a beer after. We're famous, folks. When that river died, it was indicative of our own deadness, our own lack of responsibility, our taking for granted the resources God entrusted to us, thinking that they're limitless, our ungratefulness for all that God, the earth, provides. and one of my favorite people would agree, Pope Francis. You thought I'd say Frederic, didn't you? He would too. Pope Francis begins his second encyclical letter. Now, know that an encyclical letter is the highest form of papal correspondence. The first one he wrote really because Benedict never finished it. So in essence, his first real encyclical letter was about climate change. It's called On Care for Our Common Home and begins this way. Laudate si, mi signore. Praise be to you, my Lord. In the words of this beautiful canticle, St. Francis of Assisi reminds us that our common home is like a sister with whom we share our life, and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us. Praise be to you, my Lord, through our sister, Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us, and who produces various fruit with colored flowers and herbs. That was the first St. Francis that Pope Francis is quoting. And the Pope goes on to say, this sister now cries out to us because of the harm we have inflicted on her by our irresponsible use and abuse of the goods with which God has endowed her. We have come to see ourselves as her lords and masters, entitled to plunder her at will. The violence present in our hearts, wounded by sin, is also reflected in the symptoms of sickness evident in the soil, sickness evident in the water, sickness evident in the air and in all forms of life. This is why the earth herself, burdened and laid waste, is among the most abandoned and maltreated of our poor. She groans in travail, which is a reference to Romans 8. We have forgotten that we ourselves are dust of the earth. Our very bodies are made up of her elements. We breathe her air, and we receive life and refreshment from her waters, unquote. The encyclical letter of the Holy Father goes on to critique and condemn consumerism, irresponsible development, laments environmental degradation and global warming, and calls all people of the world to take swift and unified global action. Or, as the visionary mystic Hildegard von Bingen wrote in her Reflection on Our Present Plight, the high, the low, all of creation God gives to humankind to use. If this privilege is misused, God's justice permits creation to punish humanity. And that was in the 12th century. Reflection on our present plight. Apparently, we haven't learned much since then. And here we are, year 2019, and the greatest threat to humankind and all of life is our sick planet. Hashtag climate change is real. So where do we find our hope? Can anything be done to save the planet, Lynn, Sarah, Marilyn, other members of our green team? Or have we just gone too far? Are we too far gone? What would Edith Chase say? What would God say? Don't we believe that God is still speaking? In fact, God has been speaking for centuries. I'm just not sure we've been listening. So listen again to Psalm 24, where we're reminded that the earth is the Lord's, not ours. The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, and those who live in it. For God has founded it on the seas and established it on the rivers. And in Genesis 9, God establishes a covenant with Noah in response to the floods. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by destructive waters, and never again shall there be a flood that destroys the earth. God said, this is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Genesis 9. Every time you see a rainbow, not the kind Becky referred to on the burning river, but a rainbow, rest assured that it is God. It is God reminding you of the promise God made to Noah so long ago in that first covenant, but also to the entire earth, to you and to me, indeed to every living thing. You see, God has held up God's promise to us to care for all creation. It is us who haven't lived up to our part of the deal. And that kind of obscene negligence is what leads us to a river once teeming with life catching on fire. Burn on, big river, burn on. There is no longer a river that runs through this town. And yet, it was the disaster that ignited an environmental revolution 50 years and 1 month ago today, explained Jennifer Latson of Time magazine. The flaming Cuyahoga has become a figurehead for America's mounting environmental issues and sparked wide-ranging reforms, including the passage of the Clean Water Act and the creation of federal and state environmental protection agencies. Thanks to, among many, our very own environmental angel, Edith Chase. Kent UCC, this is our history. Or in this case, this is our herstory. It is no wonder that she chose the passage from Revelation. Please don't say Revelations, there was only one, Revelation. Just a little moment of teaching there. It is no wonder that she chose that passage from Revelation to be read at her memorial service. The text Sarah read again today, for Edith believed in the Cuyahoga as a river of the water of life. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God through the middle of the street of the city. On either side of that river is the tree of life, with its 12 kinds of fruit, producing fruit each month, and the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. Nothing accursed will be found there anymore. Church, 50 years after our crooked river died, it has come back to life. Poster child for the Clean Water Act, the Cuyahoga is the ultimate resurrection story. Can I get an amen, Frank? Amen. God upheld God's promise, and this time, so did we. Through hard work, research, committing to simple, earth-friendly living. And if you need some more ideas for how to do that, please see Sarah and Lynn and Marilyn and many, many others who are involved in this ongoing environmental movement. Through community activism, advocacy at all levels, public policy, and passion and persistence and a profound conviction in the promise of God to make all things new, Edith Chase and all of us brought our Cuyahoga back to life. Amen. God's Spirit went across the waters of chaos and breathed new life. I can imagine that the writer of Genesis knew that he'd be talking about the Cuyahoga. Because it is possible. It is possible. Resurrection is achievable. This river is your story. You can do it. We have done it. Trusting in the covenant God made with us, that nothing need ever be accursed on earth anymore. So let's do this. We can save our planet. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take us getting rid of and never, ever, ever buying again styrofoam in this church. God help me. Amen. There are small things we can do and must. We must hold up our end of the bargain, our end of the deal. God has been faithful to God's covenant. Have we? We can do it, Kent UCC. Let us carry on the legacy of our beloved member, Edith Chase. It is possible. And then after that, we're going to need to call Randy Newman and let him know that we've changed the lyrics to his song, Burn On. From now on, let us sing, Flow on, Big River, flow on. You never know when you're going to need to help someone else. Go now in peace, serve the Lord, care for the poor, and save the planet.